Fame in Hollywood's golden age was often built on more than just acting talent. In an era when studios ruled and media hype reigned, many actors became stars for reasons that had little to do with their ability to convey complex emotions or deliver nuanced performances. Instead, their physical appeal, charismatic personas, or simply the power of a well-engineered public image carried them to stardom. This examines 25 actors whose careers illustrate how Hollywood elevated style, image, and marketability over genuine dramatic skill. The story begins with Victor Mature, a man whose imposing physique and smoldering looks captured the attention of audiences during the 1940s and 1950s. Mature became a fixture in biblical epics such as Samson and Delilah and the Robe. Despite his popularity, critics consistently lambasted his performances as wooden and devoid of emotional depth. Mature's career was a study in contrasts. While he joked about his lack of acting prowess by quipping that his 64 films proved he wasn't an actor, his physical presence and the studio's focus on spectacle ensured he remained a favorite for roles that demanded a larger-than-life figure. His success was not rooted in dramatic technique, but in the way studios capitalized on his matinee idol status, a product of timing and luck in an era where visual grandeur trumped nuanced performance. Esther Williams, MGM's Million Dollar Mermaid, offers another compelling example. A former competitive swimmer, Williams was cast in aquatic musicals such as Bathing Beauty and Million Dollar Mermaid, where her athleticism was showcased through elaborate water ballets rather than through emotionally charged dialogue. Critics were quick to dismiss her line deliveries as flat and emotionally detached, but the elaborate Technicolor spectacles and synchronized swimming routines captivated audiences. Williams' films were visual feasts that celebrated her unique abilities, making it clear that during this period, studios could override acting limitations by harnessing niche talent and technological innovation. Anita Ekberg's career further illustrates how visual impact often trumped acting skill. Ekberg became internationally renowned largely for her striking looks and magnetic presence on screen, epitomized by her unforgettable role in La Dolce Vita. Although her heavy accent and stiff delivery hampered her ability to convincingly deliver dialogue, her physical allure and iconic image earned her a lasting place in Hollywood history. Directors frequently cast her for the visual flair she brought to her roles rather than for any significant acting ability, reinforcing the idea that star power was sometimes more about image than substance. Jeff Chandler, celebrated for his roles in action-packed films such as Broken Arrow, was another actor whose career was defined more by his physicality than by any depth of performance. Often cast as a stoic and morally upright hero, Chandler's deep baritone voice and imposing presence made him an ideal candidate for roles that prioritize physicality over subtlety. Critics, however, found his acting to be one-note and rigid, lacking the emotional complexity of some of his more celebrated contemporaries. Despite this, the studio system's reliance on typecasting helped secure Chandler's place in the pantheon of Golden Age heroes, even if his performances ultimately failed to resonate on a deeper dramatic level. Jane Mansfield, a figure who remains synonymous with Hollywood's fascination with scandal and sex appeal, built her career on shock tactics and self-promotion. Mansfield embraced an exaggerated, hypersexualized image that made her a magnet for media attention. Though frequently compared to Marilyn Monroe, her performances were routinely dismissed as one-dimensional, and her acting was seen as little more than a vehicle for her bombshell persona. Mansfield's career, punctuated by outrageous photo ops and tabloid scandals, exemplifies how stardom in Golden Age Hollywood could be secured through controversy and sheer audacity, even if it meant sacrificing serious artistic achievement. Steve Reeves, once a celebrated Mr. Universe, became the face of sword and sandal epics in the 1950s. Reeves' chiseled physique and statuesque presence in films like Hercules and Hercules Unchained were his calling cards. While audiences flocked to see his muscle-bound performances, critics derided his acting as robotic and devoid of nuance. Reeves' success was built on his physicality, a trait that, in the context of low-budget epic films, proved to be more marketable than a broad acting range. His career paved the way for later action stars by proving that a chiseled physique could, in many cases, speak louder than words. Mamie Van Doren emerged as a deliberate counterpoint to the era's established icons like Marilyn Monroe and Jane Mansfield. With her platinum blonde hair and provocative style, Van Doren was cast in roles that leaned heavily into her sex appeal. In a time when rebellious, hyper-feminine images captivated the teen-driven market, her exaggerated performances and campy delivery became her trademarks. Although her acting was often criticized for being cartoonish, her bold public persona ensured that she remained a fixture in Hollywood's lower-budget films and later as a cult icon of camp. Deborah Paget's career in the 1950s was marked by her ethereal beauty and her casting in exotic, decorative roles. Whether playing a Native American maiden or a sultry Middle Eastern dancer, Paget's performances were often reduced to mere visual embellishments and technicolor spectacles. Critics dismissed her acting as lifeless and overly reliant on her looks, a fact that reflected the broader Hollywood tendency to value aesthetics over artistry. Despite the criticism, Paget's image as a delicate, almost otherworldly presence continued to captivate audiences, underscoring how star power can sometimes eclipse acting skill. John Derrick's career was similarly defined by his rugged, handsome features. Emerging as a leading man in films such as Knock on Any Door and All the King's Men, Derrick quickly became known more for his chiseled jawline and brooding gaze than for any substantive acting skills. Directors often relied on close-up shots to highlight his physical attributes, effectively masking his otherwise limited range as an actor. Eventually, frustrated by the constraints of typecasting, Derrick shifted his focus toward directing, though his early reputation as a handsome but unremarkable actor continued to color his legacy. Robert Taylor, often referred to as MGM's man with the perfect profile, was a product of the studio era's obsession with visual perfection. Taylor's striking good looks made him an ideal leading man for films like Camille and Ivanhoe, yet critics consistently found his performances to be wooden and lacking in emotional substance. Despite this, the magic of the MGM star-making machinery turned him into one of Hollywood's most enduring icons. Taylor's career serves as a clear example of how beauty and image could be elevated above artistic talent in a system that prized visual appeal above all else. Zsa Zsa Gabor, whose career was more defined by her glamorous lifestyle than by any significant acting contributions, further illustrates Hollywood's fixation on image. Often described as more of a socialite than an actress, Gabor's charm and media savvy ensured that she remained a fixture in the tabloids and on-screen. While her performances were widely criticized for their lack of depth, her ability to generate buzz through controversy and self-promotion made her a memorable figure. Gabor's career demonstrates that in the right circumstances, personality and personal branding can be just as important as traditional acting talent. John Wayne stands as perhaps the most iconic figure on this list. His image as the rugged, patriotic cowboy became synonymous with the American spirit, even as critics lambasted his monotonous delivery and limited range. Wayne's films, including classics like Stagecoach and The Searchers, relied heavily on his ability to embody the ideals of strength and resilience rather than any particularly nuanced acting ability. His partnership with influential studios and his embodiment of the all-American persona turned him into a cultural symbol whose fame endured despite any shortcomings in his craft. Wayne's legacy is a testament to the power of image and the idea that sometimes, being a cultural icon is enough to secure a lasting place in cinematic history. Audie Murphy's transition from a decorated war hero to a film actor is one of the more dramatic transformations in Hollywood history. Murphy starred in westerns such as The Red Badge of Courage and To Hell and Back, roles that capitalized on his real-life heroism rather than any acting prowess. Critics often noted that his performances were stiff and emotionally distant, but the authenticity he brought to combat scenes resonated with audiences. Studios cleverly exploited his battlefield reputation, turning him into a symbol of post-war patriotism. In Murphy's case, it was his legend and real-life experiences that allowed him to overcome the shortcomings of his dramatic skills. Tab Hunter emerged as one of the most notable teen idols of the 1950s. With his boyish good looks and carefully crafted public image, Hunter became a favorite for roles in films such as Battle Cry and Damn Yankees. Despite being panned by critics for his wooden performances and limited range, the marketing machine of Warner Brothers ensured that his image as the quintessential all-American heartthrob remained intact. Hunter's appeal was largely a product of post-war teen culture's obsession with matinee idols, a time when image was paramount and a flawless appearance could compensate for a lack of acting prowess. Off-screen, his closeted sexuality added an undercurrent of complexity to his persona, though the studios carefully suppressed this aspect to maintain his squeaky clean image. John Agar's career, on the other hand, was a clear demonstration of how personal charm and connections could sometimes carry an actor further than raw talent. Agar's roles were frequently marred by dull, uninspired dialogue and a lack of emotional expression, leading critics to dismiss his acting as nothing more than adequate at best. Yet, his early career success was bolstered by Hollywood connections and an appealing personal charm, allowing him to maintain a steady presence on screen even if his performances were largely forgettable. His career serves as a reminder that in Golden Age Hollywood, star power could often be manufactured as much through networking as through talent. Next in line is Roy Rogers, the king of the cowboys. Rogers built his career on a persona that epitomized wholesome American values. As a singing cowboy, his films like Under Western Stars and his loyal partnership with his horse, Trigger, defined his appeal. While his acting was often criticized as stiff and one-dimensional, audiences found comfort in his cheerful demeanor and clean-cut image. In a time when post-war America craved simplicity and moral clarity, Rogers' brand of escapist entertainment resonated deeply, proving that charisma and musical talent could easily overshadow a lack of dramatic depth. Similarly, Pat Boone transitioned from a successful singing career to the realm of acting with little fanfare from critics. Known primarily as a singer, Boone's foray into film was met with skepticism. His performances were marked by a notably stiff and monotonous delivery, and he rarely exhibited the emotional range required for more complex characters. Boone's films were crafted to highlight his musical abilities, with the singing sequences often overshadowing the rest of his limited dramatic performance. The studio system, however, continued to promote him based on his wholesome image and his success in the music industry. Troy Donahue's career similarly hinged on his image as a brooding romantic lead. Starring in films like A Summer Place, Donahue's chiseled features and effortless charm captured the imagination of adolescent audiences. Yet, critics consistently derided his performances as lifeless and overly dependent on his physical appeal. As Hollywood began to evolve with the introduction of more method actors like James Dean, Donahue's superficial approach to acting began to seem increasingly outdated. Nevertheless, his early success underscores how the studio system was adept at using looks and typecasting to quickly build a star's profile, even when the underlying talent was minimal. Rory Calhoun carved out a niche in the vast landscape of westerns. Known for his rugged looks and stoic demeanor, Calhoun appeared in over 80 films, many of them low-budget productions that required little more than a reliable presence and a capacity to deliver lines without fuss. Critics dismissed his acting as serviceable but uninspired, yet his charm and physicality made him a consistent favorite among audiences during the Western boom. Calhoun's ability to thrive in an industry that demanded genre-specific traits over genuine emotional range speaks to the era's appetite for quick, marketable stars who fit a certain mold. George Raft became a defining presence in gangster films during the 1930s and 1940s. Known for his tough guy image and associations with organized crime figures, Raft's performances were criticized for their stiff delivery and reliance on cliched mannerisms. Despite these criticisms, his real-life connections to the underworld lent an air of authenticity to his roles, allowing him to embody the persona of a streetwise menace. The studio system's ability to market him as the quintessential gangster ensured that his image remained intact even as his acting was repeatedly questioned. Raft's story is a cautionary tale about how typecasting and sensationalism can lock an actor into a particular niche, regardless of their actual skill. Rhonda Fleming, known as the Queen of Technicolor, dazzled audiences with her radiant red hair and luminous on-screen presence. In films where vivid color and spectacle were paramount, Fleming's beauty was the main attraction, even if her acting skills were deemed superficial. Critics often described her performances as flat, but MGM's lavish productions and the era's fascination with Technicolor helped to secure her popularity. Her roles, often limited to being a visual counterpoint to male leads, underscored the idea that during this period, aesthetic appeal was sometimes valued more than dramatic ability. Van Johnson, the archetypal boy next door of MGM's roster, capitalized on his affable looks and everyman charm to become a beloved star during the 1940s and 1950s. Johnson's roles in films such as A Guy Named Joe and various musicals were crafted around his relatable, wholesome persona. Although critics often dismissed his performances as superficial and lacking in dramatic intensity, his unthreatening image resonated with post-war audiences seeking comfort and optimism. The studio system ensured that Johnson's career was carefully managed, allowing him to avoid roles that might expose any limitations in his acting ability. Lex Barker, who took on the role of Tarzan in the late 1940s, became a symbol of physical prowess and adventure. Despite inheriting the Tarzan mantle from Johnny Weissmuller, Barker's performances were frequently criticized as flat, a talking statue, as some reviewers put it. His athletic build and commanding presence allowed him to maintain a career in action roles, particularly in European sword and sandal films, even if his emotional range was severely limited. Barker's legacy highlights how an actor's physicality and the enduring appeal of a character franchise can sustain fame even when the acting itself leaves much to be desired. Fernando Lamas, the Argentine-born Latin lover, built a career on his suave, romantic image. In films like The Merry Widow and Dangerous When Wet, Lamas's thick accent and carefully rehearsed gestures contributed to a persona that was more caricature than nuanced character. Critics argued that his performances relied too heavily on clichés and exaggerated charm, yet his on-screen persona was exactly what the studios needed to market a particular kind of exotic appeal. Lamas' career is a vivid reminder that in the golden age of Hollywood, the allure of the Latin lover was often constructed more through visual style and persona than through any profound acting ability. Finally, Alan Ladd rounded out the list as a study in minimalist performance. Known for his roles in films like Shane, Ladd exuded a brooding intensity that was conveyed largely through his icy blue eyes and measured delivery. However, critics often argued that his performances were emotionally detached, relying more on his physical presence than on any dynamic acting ability. Ladd's career, much like that of many of his contemporaries, was a product of a system that valued the projection of cool, enigmatic masculinity over overt dramatic expression. In conclusion, these 25 actors from Hollywood's golden age illustrate a fascinating paradox: fame was not always synonymous with acting talent. In a time when the studio system wielded enormous power, stars were often manufactured through a careful blend of marketable looks, carefully curated public images, and strategic casting decisions that prioritized style over substance. Ultimately, the story of these actors is not one of failure but of a different kind of success, one where the allure of the image and the power of media could transform even the most unremarkable performances into lasting icons. Their careers serve as a reminder that in Hollywood, sometimes it's not the depth of talent that matters, but the strength of the persona, the timing of the moment, and the relentless machinery of the studio system that can elevate an actor from relative obscurity to the status of legend.